The following is an article in the publication The Neo-Ciceronian Times from September 11th, 2025. The title of the article is Crossing a Line. The subtitle reads, One that they won't be able to uncross. It was written by Theophilus Chilton. The author included an image of a public speaking event under a tent labeled The American Comeback, with a crowd gathered around. The nothing ever happens crowd was once again proven wrong today, in one of the most horrific ways possible. While speaking at the opening event for his American Comeback tour at Utah Valley University today, conservative influencer Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck by a sniper and sadly passed away shortly afterwards. As of the time of this writing, the murderer has not been captured. However, there seems to be a pretty good suspect, a transgender who made some fairly obvious threats against Kirk just yesterday. If the truth be told, this kind of escalation was practically inevitable, given the increasingly unhinged rhetoric and behavior coming from the left. The left has been purposefully accelerating our social and political collapse because of their delusion that they'll finally get the revolution they've wanted since the 1960s. Despite the vast differences between earlier successful communist revolutions and what they're trying to do in the USA now, armed versus unarmed populations, broad-based versus relatively small middle class, etc., they are still essentially following the same game plan they've tried elsewhere, which has had some notable failures. The sort of dysgenic bio-trash that comprises the majority of today's modern left simply doesn't have the staying power that earlier generations of leftist revolutionaries did. This isn't stopping them from trying, however. We've seen lefties assassinate CEOs in the street. We've seen them shoot up Catholic schools. We've seen them burn down city centers while hiding behind friendly DAs and city governments. We've even seen them try to knock off the leading presidential candidate in last year's election, who is now the sitting president. Indeed, we've been seeing a steady stream of stochastic terrorism from the left, which started years ago, but has accelerated since Donald Trump took office. Undergirding all of this has been a steady stream of extremist rhetoric from left-wing outlets and the mainstream media. But I repeat myself, which cannot help but have the effect of tipping already mentally unbalanced lefties over the edge. If nothing else, this assassination ought to put to rest the fantasy that all we need to do is sit down and have a jolly fine debate with the left, and they'll see reason and come around. That is not going to happen at all, because progressivism is not about fairness or debate or reasonableness or whatnot. It's about power. They want power over you and me, and if they have to kill people who get in the way, well, that's what they've been doing anyways since 1789. Charlie Kirk tried the route of reasoning with them. He was perhaps one of the most plain vanilla, normie-friendly voices out there, far from being a far-right extremist, and they literally still murdered him, something they'd apparently been threatening for months. What's more, they don't even have the decency to pretend to be remorseful or regretful about it. Reddit and Blue Sky were full of retarded neckbeards cheering on Kirk's death. Rank-and-file Democrats, like this public school teacher from Pennsylvania, took the opportunity to show us what uniquely trashy people they really are. Democrats on the floor of the House of Representatives screeched and caterwauled when Republicans tried to hold a moment of silence and prayer for Kirk. Illinois Governor Pritzker tried to deflect blame to J6 and Trump, using contortion that no man, as fat as he is, ought ever to attempt. Elizabeth Warren, naturally, used this tragedy as an excuse to call for more gun control, while demanding that all the people who are rightly upset about Kirk's murder turn down the temperature. No lady, you people let a flare under the thermostat, and there's likely no turning it back down now. And that's where we're at. The left, the progressive organizations and the Democratic Party and all the rest, know that they screwed up too obviously this time. They've burned through their last remaining stash of plausible deniability. Whether or not you thought Kirk was right in trying to mainstream soft dissident right ideas to normie cons, the fact is that he was a genuinely nice guy who truly believed in what he was doing. People liked him. He had a wonderful family and set a good example for a lot of people. He was popular with a broad swathe of this country, so to see the left not only assassinate him, but then try to justify it because, he was racist, fascist, homophobic, truniphobic, is going to make a lasting impression on a lot of people. And it's not the kind of impression the left really wants to be made. The fact of the matter is that this is what the left is. They are not good people in any sense of the term. They're small-minded cretins with delusions of grandeur. And we should not brook any kind of argument that these are just a few individuals. You can't tag the entire left with this. Yes, you can. We've already seen the level of support that the left, as a whole, gives to its stochastic terrorists, no matter what they do. To support it is to be complicit with it, and there are millions in this country who are guilty of giving this aid and comfort to left-wing enemies of the people of America. And no, both sides aren't equally to blame, as some have tried to argue. We haven't seen the right assassinating its political enemies nor burning down cities. False equivalency arguments like this should be rejected outright. And frankly, something does indeed need to be done about the progressive left in this country. Trump needs to strike while the iron is hot and get busy rolling these people up. It's probably too much to ask that the Democratic Party itself be outlawed, but it should certainly be feasible to at least place Antifa and other far-left groups on the list of terrorist organizations and use this to bust them up. Since transgenderism contributes a grossly outsized amount of the recent violence, steps need to be taken to institutionalize transgenders themselves while outlawing and prosecuting the people, doctors, teachers, angry ex-wives, etc., who push that ideology onto children. Go after the people in the media who incite the violence with their rhetoric and stop letting these people hide behind the First Amendment. Prominent leftists need to go to jail or worse for the good of the country. Their NGOs and think tanks need to be defunded and shattered. The left wants a civil war. This much is obvious. They want one because they mistakenly believe they will win it. In one sense, this was sort of inevitable as we approach the terminal collapse point of our present demographic structural cycle. Collapse phases always see sharply increased amounts of civil strife across all levels of society, from the local to the national. So it is here. But it's one thing to understand this in a clinical fashion from reading a few books. It's quite another to see it playing out in real time before your very eyes. But the thing is, if the left wants to provoke a violent civil conflict, then they're going to get it good and hard. These people really have no idea what they're doing to themselves. The common assumption, held by most on the left as well as quite a few cynical wags on the right, is that because right-wing, mostly white Americans have a high level of patience, this patience will never run out. They'll never use their guns to defend themselves. They'll just let the left keep pruning their kids and assassinating their influences indefinitely. That is not a good assumption to make. When the dam breaks, and it will, they will be begging for the days when nice, reasonable guys like Charlie Kirk were the face of the right in America. The likelihood of this only increases as progressives continue to undermine the legitimacy of civil institutions such as policing, the courts, juries, and the rest. Those institutions protect lefties not only in the obvious ways that have been procedurally exploited by Soros DAs, but also in the sense that people on the right, because we desire order and the rule of law, restrain themselves to remain within the boundaries set by these institutions. Once that restraint goes away, There's no way you can really deal with millions of armed people, many of them combat veterans, who decide to respond to your provocations in kind. You can cope all you want about the army and how you're going to fight F-16s, but they will not win that, should they bring it to point. The only real way to turn down the temperature would be for the left to de-escalate themselves. But they simply aren't capable of doing this to any great degree. They can't help themselves. It is within the core nature of their ideology to subvert and undermine and attempt to destroy existing orders and to try to replace them with their own power. If they have to use violence to achieve this, in their eyes, that's just the cost of doing business. So the only other alternative to allowing them to drag us into open conflict is to crack down on them so hard that it shatters their organization and their ability to do anything. They're currently acting out of desperation. Trump got back into office and is actually taking effective steps against their funding and their power bases. And it is this desperation which is going to provoke their destruction. That concludes Crossing a Line, an article from September 11th, 2025 in the publication The Neo-Ciceronian Times.